It's one of the strangest stories to roil Boston in recent memory. A satanic black mass was scheduled yesterday on Harvard's campus, but drew protests from Boston's Catholic community and ended up taking place in a Chinese restaurant. As weird as it sounds, the episode raises big questions about the balance between academic freedom and religious beliefs. WGBH News reporter Adam Reilly has more.
Harvard University was supposed to be the site of a black mass yesterday, a centuries-old mockery of the Catholic rite of communion. While Harvard President Drew Faust condemned the event, she said student organizers had a right to hold it. But ultimately, plans to conduct a black mass on campus fell through, an outcome cheered by senior Aurora Griffin.
I am very pleased that my religion is not going to be desecrated.
Instead, Harvard was the scene of a so-called holy hour organized by the Boston Archdiocese, whose spokesman Terrence Donnellan tells WGBH, under no circumstances were we going to stay silent on this. It's an attack on the Eucharist, which is an attack on the Catholic Church, which is offensive to 1 billion Catholics. Still, the Black Mass did occur last night at the famously gritty Hong Kong restaurant, featuring, according to the Harvard Crimson, 4 individuals in hoods, 1 man in a white suit, a cape, and a horn mask, and a woman revealed to be wearing only lingerie. No word on whether they shared a scorpion bowl after.
Here to talk more about the Black Mass and the motivations behind it is Lucian Greaves, a local member of the group that performed the Black Mass. So, Lucian, just for people who are uninitiated, really don't know anything about this, what actually takes place at a Black Mass?
A Black Mass is a reenactment based on certain mythologies called from the old witch hunts and literature. The Black Mass's origins have always come from conspiracy theorist fears of satanic cults that never actually existed, but it's something that some people embrace now as a rejection of supernaturalism, as a declaration of personal independence. It's not meant to incite demons or raise the devil. It's just an act of personal liberation.
Is it intended to be a mockery of the Eucharist, and does it bother you that people are offended by it?
Well, we were cognizant of the fact that people would be offended, and for that reason we were clear that this is a reenactment. So I actually didn't expect this kind of outrage. You have a film like Haxan from 1922 where they enact a Black Mass. And my feeling was, what would actually be the difference if we said we were doing a live performance of the film Haxan? Would it be anywhere near as offensive to people? And should you have to play those little semantic games? But we were also clear that we weren't using a consecrated host. And if anybody had reached out to us, which nobody did, we would have been able to explain that though this does have its roots in this kind of Catholic imagery, it's taken on a life of its own, and it means something completely different now to those who would engage in it.
What means something different?
The Black Mass ceremony.
I see. All right, why don't I bring a couple other voices into this? Ray Flynn is the former mayor of Boston, of course, and U.S. ambassador to the Vatican under President Clinton. And Wendy Kaminer is a lawyer and free speech advocate. First, Ray Flynn, you were at the protest last night after the Black Mass moved off campus. What was it that you found so offensive about it?
Well, I was at the church, St. Paul's Church, that Mass organized by Father Michael Dre. I found the comments from the young students at Harvard, MIT, Catholic students, quite amazing. There were 1,500 kids there, 1,500 students, and they really found this very, very offensive, as I did, because it was a negative depiction of who we are as Catholics. There's so much more that you could tell about a group of people and about a faith without resorting to this kind of, it's almost in the gutter as to what we believe in. And we wouldn't do that to other people's faith, other people's race or religion. And we just found it very offensive. And that's the reason why I thought the story last night was bigger than what the story we thought it was. The story was that people got involved. There wasn't one politician there. There wasn't very much media there, but there were a lot of young students, and they expressed their point of view. They were the story last night. Students speak out.
All right, I want to bring the kind of academic part into this, too, because President Drew Faust, Wendy, said, look, this group has the right to have their meeting. people have and Catholics or whoever has the right to be offended by it, but it was sort of a nowhere position because
it was a nowhere position, and I wish she had taken a stronger position in defense of both religious liberty and academic freedom, which is what the students who wanted their Satanic Mass were trying to exercise. And I am offended by some of the teachings and traditions of the Catholic Church, deeply offended, but I would never presume to try to drive the church off campus, to try to drive the ritual of any religion that offended me off campus, or shut it down anywhere. And I am very, very troubled by this increasingly prevalent notion that people have a right not to be offended, and that when they are offended, it is appropriate and even desirable for them to try to shut down the speech or expressive behavior that's offending them, or drive it out of their community. And I think it's important. I do agree with Ambassador Flynn that this is a larger story, and I think the larger story is the context for this event, which is disinvitations of commencement speakers, which is regular protests by students of offensive remarks by other students. It's incidents like the protests of the partially nude statue at Wellesley College.
All right, so on that point, why not just ignore this, Ray? Why have a protest? If you just ignored it, and frankly, no one would have known about this.
I don't agree with ignoring it, because we also have rights, too, and we have an obligation as Catholics to speak out and defend what we believe in. So let the debate begin, and I was very pleased with the way this was debated and came across yesterday. Look, it wasn't Cardinal O'Malley that changed this around. It wasn't even the president of Harvard University that changed this. It was the young students, and this went viral. This went all across the United States. There were 41,000 people that responded to a petition. For the first time in my lifetime, in a long time anyway, I saw Catholics really getting actively involved. They
I want to bring Lucian
outraged.
back into this, though. Are you pleased with the way this ended up? Because your movement, your organization, in a sense, got more attention and more prominence, more coverage than it ever would have had if there hadn't been the protests. And then you ended up having it at this restaurant, this Chinese restaurant. Were you pleased with the way it ended up?
No, actually, I avoided a lot of press on it, and we frankly didn't need media for this. We have plenty of media on other things.
How big is your organization?
Well, we allow people to sign up for free, so we do have thousands of people, but the level of interactivity varies greatly from person to person.
And how often do you do these black masses?
We don't, and that was part of the presentation, was we were explaining that this has become inextricable from the image of the Satanist, and so therefore it was kind of important. And some people like this kind of thing when they themselves are leaving their superstition or whatever. They get to see that they can embrace blasphemy or whatever else without the earth opening up beneath them or whatever. So, but just the same, the core philosophy we have and the kind of drive toward personal sovereignty and away from arbitrary authority isn't really given to rote mechanical process like ritual. It's kind of quaint and antiquated.
I want to give Wendy the last say here.
Thank you. I would stand up for the right of offended Catholics to argue, to debate, to protest what was going on. What troubles me is that they weren't trying to engage in a debate. They were trying to shut down a ritual they didn't like. They were trying to drive it off campus, and they succeeded in driving it off campus. And that's the problem. And that's a very large problem. It is intolerant, closed-minded. It is the opposite of critical thinking.
What happened
and it's
with
dangerous to
Condoleezza
democracy.
It's kind of interesting. If it happens against Catholics, it's all right to offend them. But if it happens against other people, the advocates are willing to come right out and defend them.
That is a distortion
of
what I just said.
silent when it comes to Catholics. I know that that's the culture that we live in America today. That's not. It's politically incorrect.
I have an analogy.
And that's unfair.
I would like to give.
It's inconsistent.
That's not what I said.
Last word here.
The idea that the Black Mass is hate speech against Catholics is actually quite offensive to us, because we feel that the origins of the Black Mass was rooted in hate speech from the Catholic Church to justify the purges of heretics and other people they deemed worthy of being burned at the stake, witches or whatever else. And the analogy I had for this, to try to understand why it would be offensive to us, is the use of the N-word within black hip-hop artists or poets, when they embrace the word. And there's two sides of that argument that I respect, where some people say you can use that word and you then diminish its value and change its meaning. and therefore that has a positive outcome. And there's other people who say that using that word, given its cultural, historical context, could never be a positive thing, and you shouldn't do it. I respect both sides of that. Now, if you're talking about the Black Mass, you could say that nothing positive could come of it because it comes from this idea of mocking the Black Mass or the Eucharist. And you could say like, it's positive for us because it's this declaration of personal independence. But the idea, if we're using the N-word analogy, it would be that you then have, if it were white racists saying that the N-word was hate speech towards them,
okay,
because
I think we have your point.
Right.
All right, this is a complicated discussion. Thank you all for being here.